Welcome back, investors, to Ticker Time News. I'm Adam, and if you're great at reading tea leaves, then you are surely great at being able to understand today's market dynamics. Now, more on those hidden messages in just a moment. One thing that was interesting about today's turnaround in the market is there is now a bit of a bullish sign here on the chart. And that is that today's close at 37.52 right here at that blue dot was higher than the open on Tuesday, than that high. That is a positive. Something else that is close to a positive, but not quite there yet to say, well, this thing's going to launch from here on out, is these 3 days right here, okay? This is October 4th, 5th, and 6th. These highs, especially on the 4th, especially on the 4th and 5th, we need to break those two highs, close above those two highs, and then I would say we could have a rally on our hands. And maybe the timing of that seasonality chart that I keep bringing up, maybe now we're shifting over to it. But one day does not prove anything in this market. It's just a one-off right now. There's no follow-through. We won't know anything else about it until on Monday, right? Remember this day right here on Thursday? We had a huge green candle. But what happened the very next day? We had a big red candle. So one green candle does not change the narrative at all, not one bit. So we're going to talk about today's market and also about some momentum stocks that beat the SPY this week. Now, the stock market, it did close out the week on a strong note. There's no doubt about it, registering some big gains on this options expiration day. Now, price action in the Treasury market, it did provide the basis for today's rally after market participants reacted to new Fedspeak. The Fed is changing its tone, and we're going to talk about that in more depth. Now, ahead of today's open, though, Treasury yields were on the rise. My shorts were still green from yesterday. And Snap, which was down 28.1% today, commented about a difficult advertising environment that stoked general concerns for growth. Now, the 10-year, it reached 4.32% overnight, and the 2-year yield, it hit 4.64%. This seemingly set the market up for a sell-off today. But sentiment quickly shifted after a very suspicious article published by, and I'm sorry, Nick, I'm going to mess up the last name. I know I am. Nick Timmeros. I'm sorry if I mispronounced it, but Nick at the Wall Street Journal. This is the article that set the market off right here. Nick is thought, and I've mentioned this before on previous live streams, and I've mentioned this before in our private investor community. Nick is thought by some to be the Fed's preferred source for, quote, leaking insight on what the Fed is thinking and what the Fed is thinking about monetary policy in order to gauge market participants' reaction to the Fed's thinking. So, Nick indicated in this article right here that the Fed will raise its rates by another 75 basis points at the November meeting. But, and this is the kicker, then possibly consider a smaller increase at the December meeting. Does this mean a 50 basis point rate hike in December? 25? We don't know what that means yet. It's very cryptic. And like I said at the beginning, if you're good at reading tea leaves, then you were probably good at picking up the hints in this article for what that actually means to what the Fed is going to do. Now, We shared this earlier today with our private investor community. You can see that right here. This is the backside of Patreon. And this is the note that we sent out to our private investor community to let them know about what was happening in the stock market, why sentiment suddenly turned bullish in the market. And yeah, the main point is the highlighted part here. And in this post, it said buying efforts perked up after Nick's article indicated the Fed is, quote, barreling towards another 75 basis point rate hike at the November 1st and 2nd meeting. But then will likely debate, quote, whether and how to signal, keywords there, signal plans to approve a smaller increase in December, end quote. And that was the quote that sent the market off this morning like a rocket to the moon. So, for those of you who are not yet a part of our private investor community, how could you have used this information to help you make better decisions in today's market? Let me know. Now, you can get instant access to our private investor community simply by clicking the first link in the description. Now, the market did struggle a little bit to find its footing early on. Let's look at the 5-minute chart here for the SPX, which is a ticker for the S&P 500. Look at that. You can see this morning, it shot off first thing, right? Let's just put today on the screen. There you go. It shot off as soon as the market opened. Then there was some selling into strength as people were trying to figure out what's going on. Why did this rally occur? What is happening? All right. And then once that was out, once the cat was out of the bag about the Fed, and there were more Fed speak, or there was more Fed speak added to that article, the market just rallied for the rest of the day. Now, after it found its footing, which wasn't until San Francisco Fed President Daly, who, by the way, is not an FOMC voter, so she cannot vote on rate hikes. She said that she thinks stepping down on the pace of rate increases will help to preserve the market structure. Piling onto this is St. Louis Fed President Bullard today, who is an FOMC voter. Bullard said that he hopes to get a deflationary process going in 2023, adding that the job market remains strong. And this was according to Bloomberg. These comments precipitated buying interest in the Treasury market. Now, the Treasury market, which fueled broad buying interest today in the stock market. Why? Because the 10-year settled at 4.21%, and the 2-year yield settled at 4.51%. This allowed all 11 S&P 500 sectors to close in the green, with materials, ticker XLB, leading the charge with the biggest gain of 3.5%. Real estate, XLRE, up 0.7%, and communication services, XLC, up 0.9%, brought up the rear. Now, communication services, obviously, it was weighed down by Meta Platforms, ticker symbol Meta, META, who lost 1.2% today, which sold off in sympathy with Snap in their humongous drop today of over 25%, 28%. Now, the energy complex futures settled in mixed fashion. Let's pull up oil. Am I going to break down the article? Here's what I can do. It is a paywall I believe. So let me copy this. I'm going to put it in the chat and let's see if that will work. I wasn't planning on going through this article. I was going to try and keep today short and sweet. But what I said at the very beginning, that was the highlight of this article, right? So like here, for example, what you really want to pay attention to in this article, and reading the tea leaves, I'm really joking about that. But let's see, can I get the quotes right here? Like this is a quote from Fed Governor Christopher Waller. We will have a very thoughtful discussion about the pace of tightening at our next meeting. Okay. So they're definitely doing 75 basis points at the November 2nd. Okay. That's the second day of the meeting. That's the end of the meeting. That afternoon, we're going to get the 75 basis point rate hike. But as you go through this article, it talks about the 10-year, it talks about the Fed's rate hikes. You can continue to go down through here. You've got other quotes from the Fed. The time is now to start planning for stepping down. And that was from San Francisco Fed President Mary Daly, right? And then you just continue to go down through here. You've got Cleveland Fed President in here. Who has signaled she favors rate hikes of 75 basis points at each of the Fed's next two meetings. So December is included in that. And also, we can't let wishful thinking drive our policy decisions. So she's a hawk. Definitely wants 75 at both meetings. But the big point of this article is that while there are Fed officials, and they're littered throughout this article, while there are Fed officials who want a 75 basis point rate hike at both the November and December meetings, not all Fed officials here believe the December rate hike should be as aggressive. And that's really what got the market thinking that a Fed pivot could be in the works, but pivot, in my point of view, is too strong of a word. Pivot is when you go from doing one thing, you pivot, and then you go to doing something completely different. Like instead of hiking rates, you pivot and you start lowering rates. That's what I think of as a pivot. Now, what this appears to be is a slowdown, or not even a pause. A pause would be they're raising rates and then they stop. They don't raise them anymore and they hold. That's a pause. This is a slowdown. Right here, it says if officials decide to raise rates by 0.5%, which is 50 basis points in December, they would have a reason to worry about triggering another market rally. Okay? This was a chief economist at Oxford saying that the equity market has been so eager to see pivots, and there's that word pivot right there, by the Fed, she said. Fed officials have to explain that 50 basis points is still a meaningful increase, and it is not a pivot like I was just saying. So the terminology here, all market participants need to be on board with knowing the definition of the word pivot, pause, and slow down. And right now, we are liable to get the front running of a quote Fed pivot, because some market participants out there are not going to realize what is actually happening. They're going to say, oh, the Fed's going from 75 basis points down to 50 basis points. Well, that's a Fed pivot. No, 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 that is not. That is a Fed slowdown. A Fed pause, they're raising rates, they stop raising rates, and they hold right where they are. And a pivot is when they're raising rates, they're quantitative tightening, and then they start to lower rates and they start to do quantitative easing. That's a pivot. So we all need to be on the same playing field here with understanding what these three definitions are for these three terms. Unfortunately, though, there are many market participants out there who don't know the difference between those three terms. So I'm glad you're here because you definitely understand those three terms very clearly right now. Okay, moving off of this article, it that sums it up, and then that's the end of the article right there. Now, the last quote, I'll read that one. The last thing you want is ... to raise rates even more to undo all that. So any work that has been accomplished by raising rates, you don't want to turn around and lower rates and then have inflation start to creep back up again in 2 months or 3 months time. So that's the article in a nutshell, right? All right, back to it. Crude oil, WTI crude oil futures rose 0.5%. Let's look at this. U.S. oil, OIL, on TradingView was up 0.5% to $84.91 a barrel. Natural gas futures, they fell big, 7.8%. Now, the energy sector, let's pull XLE up here for the energy sector. The energy sector proved to be a payoff for our momentum stocks picks, or our momentum stock picks this week, and quite frankly, over the past 3 weeks in a row, because they've been our top 3 momentum stocks for the last 3 weeks in a row have been the same. XOM, OXY, CVX. Let's look at those real quick. Let's start with CVX. We'll go backwards on this list. And I've got a box pulled up here. Let me switch to the daily view so you can see right on the chart. Over the past 3 weeks, because we've picked them for 3 weeks in a row, and at the beginning of this week, I thought I was crazy for picking them again, but we did. And you can see here, Chevron, ticker symbol CVX, was up 16.2% over that 3-week period, right? Wishful thinking, absolutely. Let me pull this down a little bit here so it's a little clearer to see. Oh, well, you're not working, not cooperating with me. All right, so there you can see that. Now, let's go to OXY. Oops. OXY is the ticker symbol. Let this load. This is Occidental Petroleum. This was our second place pick over the past 3 weeks. 11.8% over the past 3 weeks. And then our top pick for the past 3 weeks, XOM, which is ExxonMobil. It's been on fire, on a tear. Look at this. When it loads, any minute, any second, boom, right there. 17.5% over the past 3 weeks. Now, let me go to the SPY just to prove to you that, yep, our top 3 momentum stock picks have outdone the SPY over that same time period. We have to go to October the 3rd, which is Monday. It opened down here, and then we go to where we closed at today, and I'll be generous, go a little bit higher than that, 3.6% over that same 3-week period. So our momentum stocks picks, they work. They work, right? If you are looking for instant access to our weekly momentum stock picks and insights, because we don't just share the top 10 momentum stocks, we also share a couple paragraphs of why we're picking these stocks that we're picking. Plus our weekly expected moves. Every Sunday evening they come out. Numerous trade setups throughout the week. Top 10 stocks in categories like value, growth, dividend, economic and market insights, and a private Discord server, all to help you gain the key knowledge that you need to beat this crazy market. Just click the first link in the description. We'd love to see you there. All right, moving on. Now looking ahead to Monday, I'm just about done with the live stream. So if you do have questions, go ahead and plug them in. On Monday, market participants will receive at 9:45 a.m. Eastern the preliminary October IHS market manufacturing PMI. The prior reading was 52. And services PMI, the prior reading was 49.3. The number 50 is the key number. 50 is the contraction expansion line. If you're above 50, you are expanding. If you are under 50, you are contracting. So marketing expanding just barely with the 52 with the last reading, and services contracting at a 49.3 during the last reading. Will be interesting to see where it comes in and whether manufacturing has slipped and is now contracting, and whether services has fallen more. All right, that is everything that I wanted to talk about today. So if you do have any questions, go ahead, plug them in now, and we'll go over those questions. And while you're doing that, if you could just take a pause for just a moment and do me a huge favor, click that like button, share the URL, get the URL of this video and share it with a friend, and join our private investor community by clicking the first link in the description. I don't think you'll be disappointed, because knowledge is the power and the key to being successful in this crazy market. All right. Wait, I am waiting. I'm definitely waiting. I'll give you time to get your questions in anytime. All right. Was Tesla's strength today because of the Biden headline? No, I don't think so. Not at all. I think the strength in Tesla, TSLA, is two things. One, people understanding that their Q3 earnings report was not as bad as analysts made it out to be. And two, because of all the talk in the market today about a potential Fed pivot and not understanding what was actually being said in the article, that miscommunication there, those were the two reasons why I think Tesla was up 3.4% today. If this was because of anything that Biden may have said, if this had anything to do with any other headline, I think Tesla would have been up way more than 3.4%. But since this was strictly based on retail investors, I believe, and maybe some institutional investors too, after actually listening to the earnings call, which was a little weird, but it was good, and understanding that Tesla still sees that demand and thinks that Q4 is still going to be huge. I think it's just people finally digesting the earnings information and saying, wait a minute, just because they didn't beat analyst expectations, that doesn't mean these earnings were not good. Now, they were not the best, okay? And when we talked about Tesla's earnings on earnings day, that's what I said. I said their earnings, it was not their best earnings, but it surely was not their worst earnings either. I think they were good, solid earnings. Now, cost, they need to be paid attention to. As we're going into an economic slowdown, as we're going into a recession, those things have to be gotten under control. And today we have headlines that Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos are both saying that a recession is coming and to prepare your house now. And this is something that I said at the beginning of this year, all the way back in January, on this live stream. I was talking about how companies, as being an entrepreneur myself, and have started and sold a couple different companies. One thing that all companies must do to be successful is when times are good, that's when you pay down your debt. That's when you get your financial house in order. So that way, when you come to a slowdown, when you're going through a recession, your financials are strong, and your financials can help carry you through the hard times. And then when the times are good again, you fill up that war chest, or you fill up that, rainy day fund again. And that's when you go, as we go into a recession, you have a good balance sheet, you have good financials. If you want to grow your business with acquisitions, the best time to buy is during a recession, as long as your financial house is in order. So, just a couple thoughts there on Tesla. Any other questions? Let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to go over them. I'll give you a moment to plug them in. Otherwise, we can rock and roll. And one thing to note here, too, about Tesla and their balance sheet, they've got quite a bit of cash on hand. And going into a slowdown or a recession, I don't think there's anything to worry about Tesla. They still have demand. They are still, setting record after record after record. So right now, I don't think there's anything to worry fundamentally about Tesla. I think it's all macro level, the recession stuff. Screw Tesla. Let's see. Let's put this. This is a longer one. Let's put this up so everyone can see it. I should have put the Tesla question up too. That's not the one that I wanted to put up. Would you feel comfortable going long on semis intraday? They seem to have caught a bid like Netflix. I'll have to. I don't think so. I don't think not yet. But I'll pull that up and look at it. One of the people I follow said the Japanese buying of the won caused the run up today. We have been on a relief rally this week anyways, so maybe that helped things. I think they were doing that to secure their own currency in Japan, because there's been several countries that have been selling treasuries, and I think that's to help their currency. If you look at the dollar today, the dollar was down, and yesterday during the live stream, I said that the dollar would have to come down to help this market to rally, to help gold rally. Gold rallied today. And I also said that the 10-year would need to come down. And at first it didn't, but throughout the day it did. So those are all key to this market. So I just think it's the dollar is just super strong, right? I said that this thing looks like it could be flagging. Expansion leads to contraction, leads to expansion, and that this dollar could be getting ready for another move higher. But I shouldn't say I should say if market participants believe that, well, the Fed's going to pivot, that's what I heard, then this market's going to front run that December decision, right? I think it's on the 14th. So we could get that rally because market participants aren't understanding what was actually said in that article, right? The three definitions that I went through. The pivot, that's the extreme one. A pivot would send this market much higher. You have a pause and you have a slowdown. Those are the three terms, and I went over the definitions for those three terms and what they mean from the Fed. So this article, I think it was interesting. It was interesting. But what are market participants going to do with this information? It looks like they want to rally with it, and they want to front run it, and they want to think it's something that it's not. So, and it, again, like I said at the beginning, the Fed wants to put this idea out there and wants to see how the market reacts to it. That does not mean the Fed will do that. That does not mean that the Fed will do a 50 basis point rate hike in December. But it is putting the idea out there that they could. But we're definitely getting a 75 in, what is it, 2 weeks? On the 2nd of November. Let's see here. Let's go look at semis. SMH. Let's get back here over here. SMH, which is the Van Erik Semiconductor ETF. So it's got a nice little move that's been making. Let's open this up a little bit. Let's open this up a little bit here and let's talk about this one. All right. Bring it out of the weeds. Okay, so if we go ahead and tag this, okay, we're coming here on October the 13th, right? Which was last Thursday. And we bring it up here to Friday, okay? You could probably say that we were in a symmetrical triangle, right? Using the trend line that has been here for months, all right? You could also use the weekly expected move, right? And then you would have an ascending triangle, not a symmetrical triangle, because on the ascending triangle, the top line is flat, right? So you could say then that we had this chart pattern here, and semis then broke out of that today. However, that breakout today, it got to that 20-day moving average and it halted, okay? And why would I even point that out? Because the 20-day moving average, let me clean up this chart here just a little bit. That 20-day moving average, look what happened right here the last time it got to it. It tagged it, it closed at it, and then the next day it went above it. It closed above it, and then we had a big sell-off. The time before that, didn't quite get there to use it as resistance. And then the time before that, that's when the 20-day arched over and started to become resistance instead of support. So we do have that to watch. And if we can break through that 20-day right there. And if I go to the 15-minute chart here real quick, just to look at this on a tighter time frame here. Hold on, got to click this button. All right, you can see that a little bit more better right there. That bottom line, that bottom blue trend line acting as support as it's ascending, and then the weekly expected move right there acting as the resistance line every time. We had a false breakout right here. If we're using the weekly expected move as the resistance line there, this would have been a false breakout, but then here we tagged it as resistance, and now this is the type of breakout you want to see. A big move with volume spiking, okay? Volume spike there, and now it is trucking a bit higher. That would have been great to catch today. But it is just right now 1 day, okay? That breakout is just 1 day. How could anyone see that coming? That small candle that popped out of the trend, then a drop. That is a good point. That is a good point. All right, let's back this up here. Clean this up. Okay. Now, will this continue? Whether we're talking about semiconductors here, whether we're talking about the SPY or the Qs or what it may have be, whatever it may have be, what we need on Monday is clarification from the Fed, right? If there's more Fedspeak, all right, are they going to continue to support this? I don't know if I want to call it shift in narrative, but it is a bit different. It's not a pivot and it's not a pause. It is a slowdown. So the market will rally like crazy on a pivot. The market will rally on a pause, and the market will kind of sputter up and start to push higher on a slowdown. Okay, so it's like 3 different tiers there. What we really need to see, because again, this is just 1 day. We cannot get carried away and become perma bulls over 1 day. Okay, we need to see follow through. Follow through is key. If we're looking at the semiconductor ETF here, it literally closed right above its weekly expected move and right at its 20-day moving average as resistance. That's just 1 day. Okay, we need to see follow through. We need to see it continue to move up, continue to push forward. We would also need to continue to see yields chill. The 10-year to come back down. We would also need to see the dollar to chill and come back down for us to see follow through. Okay? All right. Let's see here. So right now, I am not comfortable going long just yet. And believe me, if you want to go long, if the market dynamics have changed here, okay, if today was the day, being patient and waiting to see how the market moves on Monday and Tuesday of next week, and maybe we rally all next week. No one's got the crystal ball, but being patient and seeing the follow through, you're not going to miss out on that much, right? if we look over the past several months since the summer high, even just here on the semiconductor ETF, there's a couple of green days sprinkled in here with nice little pops. But there's also more red days with bigger drops sprinkled in here as well. So waiting for that follow through, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm being patient. All right. When I moved my stop loss on my short yesterday, I got stopped out this morning. That's fine. It stopped out with a little bit of green left. I'm fine with that. But now I'm sitting back and I'm being patient. I don't want to rush. Look at volatility. Let's pull up the VIX. We haven't looked at that in a few sessions here. VIX. And you want to choose the CB. Oh, there we go. CBOE right here. The second one on TradingView. If you look, the VIX today just closed under 30. Okay. 29.69. Rounded up, that's 30. When the VIX is at 30, that's like markets moving 2% swings every day. That's when the chop can take your capital away. So be patient. I know I've said it like 5 times now. It was just one day. Okay. Let's see here. Well, I meant because of ASML and the other semis that reported good earnings. Okay, I get your point there. Kind of like Netflix, horrible earnings, but not as bad. Yeah, Netflix was wintertime is coming back around. It's getting colder out, so of course people are firing back up their Netflix accounts. There's got to be a seasonal cycle to Netflix that revolves around the seasons. And you also have to think that, when our new shows coming back out on Netflix, it's typically in the spring and fall. And you got all your reruns in winter. But yeah, I get your point there. ASML had wonderful earnings. ASML this past week is one of the reasons why the semiconductor industry actually was up and closed in the green. So ASML had great earnings. So I see your point there, but I would just kind of counter that with the market right now is barely using market fundamentals, which are company earnings, to guide their decision. They are using the Treasury market and they are using Fed policy. And today was the perfect example of that happening. Look at the top right corner. You have the SPX, which is the S&P 500, up 2.37. The SPY up 2.43. The Qs up 2.34. The DIA, which is the Dow Jones, up 2.5. IWM, which are your small caps, up 2.1. They're all up 2% or more because of Fed policy. Fed policy. That's why. So it's not using that fundamental of company earnings to drive the overall market. Yeah, I used to be Tesla for intraday long, and now The only one I'm going long is energy or Netflix. Yeah, energy's got some room to go, but do be careful with the earnings that are coming up for energy companies. There could be a sell the news type of reaction there. All right. So do be careful with energy companies as we get to those earnings reports, excuse me. ExxonMobil, and then we'll wrap up the live stream here. Beautiful run here. Earnings right here. We are 7 days away. I'll put a vertical line here. 7 days away from earnings. So we could have 7 more days to get a few more percentage points out of here. I don't know. I'll have to do the research over the weekend to figure out if it's going to stay in the momentum stocks list or where it's going to be. But earnings will play into that decision as well. Cool. Thank you for your questions and your comments. I greatly appreciate them. This is the whole reason this live stream is here, to help the investor community, help to add to that sphere out there, to help answer your questions and help you to get through these crazy times we're in. All right. Well, I guess I'll wrap that up here then. If that's all your questions, I'll just give you another minute here. And then have a wonderful weekend. Be on the lookout Saturday for our Saturday note. Also, Sunday evening for our weekly expected moves. And then I will see you. Awesome. Wonderful. And then I'll see you on Monday after the market has closed to go over what happened, why it happened, and what to expect going forward. So thank you guys and gals so very much. I greatly appreciate each and every one of you. I hope you have a wonderful weekend as well. And again, our private investor community, you got the Saturday note, you got the weekly expect to move Sunday evening, and then we'll be back live on Monday after the market has closed. If you would like to be a part of our private investor community, just click the first link in the description. Super easy. I'd love to see you there. All right. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.